I'm a 23-year-old female security guard at a retirement community. My position consists of sitting in the guardhouse and checking in visitor and contractor vehicles. Residents come in through a separate traffic lane that is serviced automatically. Santa Creeper is what I personally call the guy in my head because I don't know his name and he looks exactly what you'd expect Santa to look like. Forever jolly, white beard, chubby, except he likes to wear Hawaiian shirts and drives a bright red car. When I first started this job a little over 6 months ago, I worked mostly shifts where I was by myself for hours at a time. I was also a lot more naive. Santa Creeper is a resident, and I knew this because he would drive through the resident lane to see who was in the guardhouse, leave through the exit, and come back through the visitor's lane to talk to me. To be honest, I liked talking to him. He was nice, and I don't get a lot of attention from people. Our talks lasted a couple of minutes, and there wasn't any important information exchanged, but it was nice. About a month and a half into my job, I had a shift with my supervisor. We got along, so we were talking about the people that come through all the time. Which ones we liked, which ones were assholes, that kind of thing. So I mentioned the SC. I offhandedly say he seems like a nice person, and my supervisor gets this look on his face. He told me how this guy has a habit of hassling female security guards and trying to lure them to his house. He tells me some of the things he has said, and I'm revolted. I completely trust my supervisor, so I believe him, and decided to distance myself from the SC. The SC gets a point after the first couple of times I brush him off, and stops seeing me for a couple of weeks. I think he won't be back. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, he pulls up and starts talking to me. I didn't notice it was him because he decided to drive a different vehicle from usual, and it's dark out. He starts talking to me about a job at his house. I ask him what the job is, and he just says, "Oh, you'll see," and winks at me. He then insists that I come with him right now so he can show me. I refuse, saying I can't leave my post. And he can see that I won't be persuaded, so he leaves pretty easily. About a week later, I see him again. He winks at me and says, "A sweet for a sweetie," and he gives me a Hershey's kiss. I'm instantly suspicious, but I say thank you, and he leaves. I open it, and it doesn't look right, so I threw it away. I saw him drive by the residence lane a few times that night. He waves at me each time. A few more weeks later, he comes by, and his wife is in the car with him this time. He tries to make conversation with me, saying how pretty I am, and how lucky my boyfriend must be. His wife is just staring straight ahead and not reacting at all. He leaves when a car pulls up behind him. It was pretty bizarre. I see him again a few days later, and he gives me another Hershey's kiss this time, saying, "You look like you could use some sugar." Shudder, and winking before driving away. I was too busy to watch to see if his car drove past again. I didn't bother opening it. I tossed it as soon as he was out of sight. I have another shift with my supervisor, and I tell him what's been going on. He looks pissed and says he's going to have words with SC. Later that day, he sees him drive up, tells me to go in the back, and talks with him. I don't hear what they said, but I do know that I didn't see SC come by again until that supervisor gets fired. For bullshit reasons. He was great at his job, and people still talk about how they miss him. With the new supervisor, I was assigned to day shift, so when I see SC, he has to behave because there's always another guard on duty. I don't typically deal with him either. I let the other guard do it. I strongly dislike my new supervisor. He's aggressively unintelligent and a kiss-ass. And I've grown to hate the company, partly because of how they fired my previous supervisor. And the job. So I will be leaving mid-June for a new job. Well, I pull up today to start my shift, and I see SC and the current supervisor talking. SC pulls away before I park my car. I'm instantly suspicious, so I ask my supervisor what they talked about. My supervisor, who is aware of the problems I've had with this guy, turns to me and cheerfully says, "Oh, he heard you were leaving and wanted to know when you were leaving." I asked him if he told him, and he asks, "Was that not okay?" I'm not too concerned about what the Santa Creeper might do because I'm never alone now when I'm here because I've been put on day shift and I park right where I can watch my car, but I'm staying vigilant. And if you guys have any ideas, let me know. 2. It was the mid-90s. I was 15 and would regularly go with my friend Jen, 16, to the mall to hang out. It was a fairly small mall, so there wasn't much to do other than putz around our favorite stores and hang out in the food court. I was pretty naive, always assumed the best about people, and wasn't always aware of my surroundings as I should have been. Jen had 2 younger sisters. Her father left when she was 7, and her mother was a bipolar alcoholic, so Jen was forced to grow up a lot faster than most kids. She was always the loud, rebellious, cynical one, never afraid to tell someone off or stand up for the underdog. Jen and I had just gotten drinks and an order of fries to split, and were heading to our table off to the side of the food court to sit and gab. It's a pretty large spread-out food court, and there are floor-to-ceiling windows on the side that faces a parking lot. There is a door you can enter directly to the food court, or go past it to an entrance to the mall. We always sat at a table towards the back corner, in front of the windows, so we can people-watch everyone coming and going. There weren't very many people at the mall that day, and even less in the food court. We were going to head home after we were done eating. There was a guy, maybe in his 40s, walking with his trash towards the garbage can behind us. Just before we reach our table, as he's passing us, he runs into me with his shoulder, hard. It wasn't an accidental bump. His shoulder checked me like a hockey player, like he was trying to knock me down. My reaction was, sorry, even though it was nowhere near my fault. I was a painfully polite kid. Jen's reaction, however, was, "What the fuck, dude?" He's got zero expression on his face. He just looks over his shoulder at both of us, walks off, throws out his garbage, and exits through the door to the parking lot. Jen knows I'm an emotionally sensitive person, sees the tears forming in my eyes, and makes a joke about his dirty grey sweatpants and Tasmanian Devil t-shirt, and helps me brush it off. Jen was in a happy, bubbly mood earlier, but after we sat for about 5 minutes, she gets increasingly obnoxious, loudly bragging about her boyfriend, Mike, who is a Marine, which I thought was odd because I could have sworn she said it was her cousin who was a Marine. And she had never mentioned having a boyfriend, but I did know she had a crazy family life that she didn't really like talking about. So I shrug it off as something that maybe I shouldn't ask too much about. Maybe they're distant cousins and they're dating now? She's obviously aggravated. and I assumed she's just peeved at the rude guy that bumped me and didn't apologize. She goes on to loudly say that her boyfriend should get here any minute, acting huffy that he is making her wait. I get pissed at this point, because she never mentioned inviting a guy to come hang out with us, until just now. And now she's being all loud and crazy. I wonder if she's taking after her mom. I get really embarrassed of her behavior. I see her face light up, and I turn to see two younger guys, early to mid-20s, walking into the food court. Jen shot up and yelled, "Mike, yay, you brought Jason." She grabbed my wrist, yanked me up, and hurried over to them, throwing her arms around the one guy. Both guys laughed and hugged her tight. "I've been wanting you to meet Jason, he's a Marine too." I'm ready to go off on her about yanking me over, causing a scene. I'm ready to go off on her about yanking me over, causing a scene, being boy stupid. Right then, there's a loud commotion, and I turn to see the guy that had bumped me. He flipped the table and raised a chair above his head, about to throw it in our direction. He yelled, "What the fuck, dude?" Mike and Jason instinctively pushed us behind them and stood in between us and the guy. The guy tried throwing the chair, but it didn't get far. A few of the food court employees rushed out and headed towards the guy, and he started backing off towards the exit to the parking lot. He kept screaming, "What the fuck, dude? What the fuck, dude?" over and over in a high-pitched voice, mimicking Jen, and making gross gestures towards us with his hands and mouth before kicking the door open and rushing out. "What the fuck, dude?" We could hear him yelling as he made his way through rows of cars and eventually disappeared out of sight. Turns out, after he bumped into me and left, he walked around the mall and entered back into the food court from the opposite side, attached to the mall. When Jen saw him come back in and sit down with a backpack that he didn't have before, and just stare in our direction, that's when she got loud about how she was meeting a big strong guy any second now, hoping it would scare him off. She thought she could be tough and handle the situation alone, but it didn't work, and he got up and moved a few tables closer to us. Jen didn't want me to freak out, and was afraid if we got up and tried to walk off alone, that he'd physically try something worse. She was quickly trying to plot out an exit strategy in her head, when the two younger guys happened to walk in. She had no idea who they were. They laughed when she ran over and hugged him because, coincidentally, his name was Jason, not Mike, and his friend's name was Rob. They just thought it was a girl they had maybe met at a party, or just some hot girl mistaking them for someone else. So they didn't deny the attention. It was just great timing, and Jan acted fast. Jason and Rob stayed with us until the police came. The guy was long gone. They said he probably had a mental illness, and we shouldn't worry. And walked us to Jan's car, even checked the back seat and underneath the car. They were good guys, and felt awful about the whole situation, but were happy they were there to help. To this day, I can't help but think about what the guy would have done if Jen didn't notice him come back in, or if he didn't come back in and waited in the parking lot instead. What did he have in the backpack that he went and got? My mind still goes back and forth from the image of his expressionless face to his angry, bright red, wide-eyed, screaming face. I still feel guilty for getting so pissed off at Jen in my head. I can't emphasize enough that if someone ever approaches you and acts like they know you, don't brush them off. Don't give them a what the fuck reaction. Play along. You could be saving someone's life or getting them out of a threatening situation. 3. This happened about 4 years ago. I was working in a small city in the UK called Gloucester. Although the countryside is very pretty, there's no nightlife outside of 1 or 2 straight clubs. I'm gay. As a result, almost every Friday after work, I take the train to Birmingham, a really big city with some great gay bars, clubs, and spend the weekend with my best friend who worked there. As I had broken up with my boyfriend, and her with her girlfriend, we had a habit of spending our weekends of drinking, dancing, and hooking up with people, then regretting it the next day over a Chinese buffet. Anyway, obviously, through this I got to meet some friends, and some guys who I could potentially be into dating. One of the guys asked me in the middle of the week if I'd like to hang out, maybe get a drink. I thought, sure, why not? I can take the train after work, and either take the last train back, or if things go well, take an early train in the morning to get to the office before 9. Anyway, we ended up getting super drunk, and I agreed to spend the night with him. Because he lived with his parents quite away from the city centre, and I absolutely had to catch a train the next day, we thought we'd book a hotel for the night. Classic. And this is where things get strange. After we leave the bar, there's a taxi outside. Now, looking back, this is a red flag because taxis are absolutely not allowed to park outside this place, as it's on a main road. But we are too drunk to realize, and, to be honest, quite horny, so we just got in the first one we saw and gave the male driver directions. The driver himself was a little heavy-set, South Asian appearance but British accent, in his mid to late 30s. Instantly, he began asking us strange questions, like questions about gay sex, what we would be doing to each other, that kind of thing. I thought he was being really unprofessional, and the other guy was actively telling him it's not appropriate at all to ask those kinds of questions. Yet he still persisted. He also insisted that he had a girlfriend and that he doesn't get gay people. I'm fairly slim, so I think he could overpower me. This is important for later. We drove around for a while and he still didn't find the place, and I finally complained and asked what the problem was. He said maybe he got the address wrong and asked me, specifically, to get in the front and enter the address on his GPS. Naturally, like an absolute idiot, I decided to do what he said. Within 5 minutes, we'd arrived at the hotel. The guy got out of the back and closed the door, and I was trying to find my wallet when the taxi driver started to drive away with me still in the car. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was just turning around. But at the end of the road, he started to drive into an area with really few people. Just lots of wide, empty roads, little lighting, old and factory-style buildings. At this point, I realized that something was very, very wrong. I demanded that he take me back to the hotel, but he just smiled and started to ask very sexual and private questions. Sexual positions, noises I make, etc. I was refusing to answer and just asked why he wanted to know. He took my hand and put it on his crotch and said, "What did you think of this?" And I was literally horrified. I wanted to get out and run, but I didn't know that part of the city well, and figured he'd just follow me anyway. He then proceeded to undo his jeans and show me his erect dick, using his arm to force my hand to touch it, asking me to play with it. and if I was lucky, I'd get the chance to sit on it. Finally, at this point, my drunken self noped the fuck out of the car and ran as fast as I could in the direction we had come from. The driver didn't follow me, and eventually, I found the hotel after 15 minutes. I left my suit jacket in the car as well, which I was devastated about. I loved that dark navy blue suit. Because I ran away, I didn't look at the license plate, so I literally couldn't do a thing. I told the police what he looked like, and told the bar staff the next time I went to tell the bouncers that illegal taxis were parking outside. But they don't work on the early days of the week because it's so quiet, so I was kind of at a loss for what else to do. Since then, I actually live in a different country, not because of the incident. And whenever I go back, I still go to that bar. I've never seen a taxi outside there again. I'm not totally sure what this guy's endgame was. What if the taxi door was locked? What if he was more adamant and was forceful in making me stay or comply? He could have probably used his physical strength to overpower me. He said he didn't understand gay people. Was this some kind of trick or plan where after he would hurt me? I think looking back is interesting because we always say that girls should never get in non-certified taxis or should be more careful, but this shows that this kind of stuff can happen to guys as well. Anyway, disgusting creep of a taxi driver. Let's not meet.